Alien Isolation isn't just horror. It traps you in the decaying world of Sevastopol Station, where you're hunted by the iconic Xenomorph. This is primal fear at its core. The station feels alive, and the Xenomorph, an intelligent, relentless creature. In this analysis, we'll go ahead and explore how Alien Isolation goes beyond typical horror by blending immersive world building with the Xenomorph's unpredictable presence, a force that's as visceral as it is psychological. Early on, Ripley encounters Axel. He is a survivor, paranoid with fear. He outfits Ripley with gear, and they are eventually chased by a group of looters. When he shoots in self-defense, he is relieved he is alive, and not the dead guy on the floor. Yeah, screw that guy. But the sound of his gunfire summons the alien. Axel meets a brutal end. He's yanked into the vents like a rag doll, and all Ripley can do is watch in horror. It is now time for you, the player, to escape. Ripley reaches a terminal, desperately calling a train to escape. The atmosphere is suffocating, and somewhere in the shadows, the alien prowls closer. Every second stretches for an eternity. Will the alien walk through the hall? Drop down? Is this scripted? This moment captures the dread Alien Isolation does so well, transforming Sevastopol into a living, breathing entity, something we'll dive deeper into later in the video. In that endless wait, I realized I never wanted to encounter the alien again. This was raw, lingering fear. On a second playthrough, I lingered too long, assuming it was all scripted, until the alien dropped down, charging straight at me. This isn't just horror, it is pure dread. The alien's terror isn't just in its unpredictability, it's in how it responds to the world around it. That responsiveness can be your greatest advantage or your downfall. I once used a noisemaker to lure the alien towards hostile humans blocking my path, and one by one they all died. But make too much noise yourself, and it will find you instead. Unlike other horror games, for example, where you can simply outrun threats, here, running is a last resort because it makes too much sound. The developers didn't just create a generic NPC with predictable paths. While some scenes are scripted for narrative impact, the Xenomorph is driven by a dynamic AI programmed to hunt you and adapt to your actions. After a few close encounters of using the flamethrower, just aiming it at the alien will cause it to block its face and move towards you slowly. However, it is still relentless. Turn your back for even a second and it's likely to charge. The Xenomorph's adaptability means even hiding spots aren't safe. Hide in a locker too often, and it'll start checking them. Hide under desks, and it'll look there too. The AI's awareness extends to combat as well. If it spots you in a firefight, it'll eliminate other NPCs before hunting you. This evolving AI makes the alien feel relentless, constantly learning and adapting. And as the alien adapts, so must the player. After one terrifying vent encounter, I learned to spot the signs: a subtle drip of saliva and the sound of breathing from above. Clues that saved me from vent ambushes. These design choices make the alien feel terrifyingly real, a relentless, perfect organism. And even nearly a decade later, Alien Isolation stands as a modern horror masterpiece. In the next chapter, join me as we explore how Alien Isolation brings Sevastopol to life, turning it into a character all its own and pushing the game beyond typical horror.
Oh my God. Get out of the way!
Welcome to Sevastopol Station. Once a thriving hub, now a hollow, infected shell. This former beacon of innovation has decayed into a living, breathing entity of horror. This entity has a brain, a heart, and lungs, which we'll explore here soon. Amid the infection spreading, a question arises. Why doesn't the Xenomorph attack the androids? In part 1, we explored the android's actions, so if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend clicking on the video linked here in the description. The Xenomorph's decision to ignore the Seegson androids likely stems from instinct. The alien pursues biological survival and propagation, targeting living organisms that can serve as hosts. Androids, unable to serve this purpose, don't elicit the same reaction. The Xenomorph's primal nature typically ignores synthetic beings, focusing on threats and potential hosts. Now, let's talk about the brain of Sevastopol, Apollo. This AI, tangled in Weyland-Yutani's grip, oversees the station's systems and androids. When Amanda Ripley finally reaches Apollo, it's fiercely guarded by super working Joes, acting like the station's immune system, desperately trying to fend off any threats. Next up is Sevastopol's heart, the reactor. It pulses with bursts of electricity and ambience, each explosion like a heartbeat. There is water that streams down continuously, making it feel like you're trapped in a storm. It's as if the station itself is struggling against the infection, pushing back, but losing. When Ripley discovers a flamethrower down here, it feels like Sevastopol's last act of defiance, offering her one final line of defense. This place isn't just failing, it's in agony, fighting back even as it falls apart. At this point, Ripley ventures into the station's lungs. She wades through ankle-deep water, surrounded by darkness and flashing lights. The infection spread becomes undeniable. Hatched alien eggs and the remains of missing residents scattered around her. Distant screams and cries can be heard as she watches, helpless. Ripley makes her way through the hive to overload a beta core, the first step to try and purge the infection. This stirs the hive, flooding the area with xenomorphs. Her motion tracker becomes useless, overwhelmed by movement. This forces her to rely on herself as facehuggers close in. The tubular hive pathways and flooded floors evoke the image of infected lungs, Sevastopol suffocating under infection, causing pneumonia. Upon re-entering the station's heart, she faces an overwhelming force of super working Joes. She battles through them, and the station protects Ripley by sending an electrical current, killing the Super Joes. Ripley overloads the reactor and finally purges the infection. However, the effort falls short. The xenomorphs remain undefeated, proving that Sevastopol's outdated systems are no match for the perfect organism. The idea of Sevastopol as a living, haunted entity is woven into every detail, setting it apart from typical horror game world building. In the next video, we'll dive into the visual storytelling of Alien Isolation and uncover even more ways this game pushes beyond typical horror.